The reality is there is an expense to taking care of yourself, right?
Mhm.
I mean,
And on the other side, there's a bigger expense. I got a bill for $1,600 from the ER for a very,
mhm,
very, very stupid minor thing that could have been prevented when I was sick. And now,
right.
you watch the bills pile up because you're consuming sugar and you're consuming the things and you're consuming the monster. And the domino effect, I think, really is more expensive on the flip side.
It is.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, you have to sort of consider what the alternative is. And I know a lot of people, I know it's not easy. I get it. But medical bills are very expensive.
Welcome to the Life by Design podcast. I'm your host, Kim Ward, a certified master life and business coach, NLP practitioner, and your guide to building a life and business that you absolutely love. Here, we're all about empowering family focused entrepreneurs to design a leveraged business that supports your dreams, your values, and most importantly, your family. Each episode, we'll dive into practical strategies, mindset shifts, and powerful insights to help you create unstoppable momentum and lasting success without sacrificing what matters most. Whether you're looking to grow your business or get unstuck or align your goals with your lifestyle, you're in the right place. So let's get intentional, let's get inspired, and let's design a life you love by design. Let's dive in. Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? This episode is for you. And unfortunately, I have been one of those people, and my husband will probably sing like a canary on this episode. But we are joined today by the Jill Rosen. Hey, Jill.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Listen, I am so happy that you're here. Rich and I have so many crazy stories about health and sickness. And I feel like I'm reading our wedding vows again.
Right?
But the truth is, Jill, you help people, you help families, you help individuals really lean into not only the education and the awareness, but the resources of holistic health on a budget. And that's so, so important. A couple years ago, I derailed my health because I was working myself literally into the ground. And boundaries are super important, which we talk about with our clients because we had to learn the hard way. I had to learn the hard way. And some of those boundaries for us are not working after a certain hour of the day. Certainly, normally, not working on weekends unless there's very extenuating circumstances. And there was a portion in my business here where I literally threw those boundaries and all of my standards out the window. And I worked myself into the ground, literally into the ground. And the ironic thing is, I was working with a financial coach, and she leaned in and said to me, Kim, what would you do if you were unable to physically work your business for 4 consecutive months? And I thought, well, Rich had literally just retired from the fire service. He has his pension, but for all intents and purposes, our business is the financial driver of our dreams and our life. I would be in big trouble. And it was no sooner after that question, I got very serious about leveraging the business, but I went down. I went down for 25 days, maybe 28, babe, 25 or 28 days.
Somewhere in there. Yeah.
We literally didn't think I was going to survive. It was so bad. And thanks to Rich's, EMS training and all his years in that field, with the relationship we have with our healthcare provider, he would call our house every day and say, Rich, get her up, get her walking. He would karate chop my back. And if you don't have good health, the relationships don't matter, the businesses or the side hustles don't matter. That's why you're here today, because what you do is so, so important. And we want to help as many people as we can through this podcast and through mentorship and through, resources like yourself. So I'm curious, what got you into wanting to holistically help people realizing that financially, it's very expensive. Eating organic and doing the things that you need to do is very expensive. So how did you get into this?
So, I initially wanted to become a medical doctor. That was my dream when I was young. And when I was about 20 years old, we had a family medical practitioner. And I told him, I said, I want to be just like you. And he told me, don't do it. And my world sort of came crashing down. And when I was asking him why, and we're going, about almost 30 years ago, we're talking, he had said to me that the insurance companies at that time, he could only spend maybe, if he was lucky, 15 minutes per patient. And he was so, what's the word I'm looking for? He was so confined by what they would allow him to do for his patients.
Mhm.
And he just felt really choked by the industry. And he said to me, Paul, if you really want to help people, this is not how you want to do this. So I had a cousin that was going to, I'm in California, and I had a cousin that was going to a school for holistic medicine in Santa Monica. And she asked me what I thought about Eastern medicine, and I hadn't known much about it, but I started doing a lot of research. And the more I researched it, the more it just made sense. I think that Western medicine is great. I don't have an issue with it, but I do think that it has its place. And I think when we are talking about true sustainable health, natural ways as much as possible is a really great way to go. And so the more I started looking into it, I just fell in love. And then I went to school, I went to grad school for it. And I've been an acupuncturist for almost 20 years. I feel really grateful for the journey. It helps a lot of people. But with that being said, in this country, it has been the way that it has been worked, oftentimes is more for people who can afford it. And as a practitioner, to be very honest, I couldn't even afford the services. And so for me, that's a travesty. And I didn't feel right about that. It doesn't align with my values because how can I charge people a fee that I could not afford to get myself if I needed that type of treatment?
Mhm.
So then, about 15 years ago, there was a movement for community acupuncture. And that is basically where you get treated in a room, typically in recliner chairs, or some type of really comfortable chair. And you will have acupuncturists go around and they will charge, let's say, a sliding scale or just a lower affordable fee. They don't ask you for any payment history or anything like that. Um, and that way you can actually get treated multiple times a week for a low cost. And that is really where the healing takes place. Because if you're having something chronic happening and you're only able to get treated, let's say once a week, which is better than nothing, don't get me wrong, but the treatments are built on one another. And so
Mhm.
once a week when you're first starting out isn't always as helpful as it could be, And so once you start to get your health up and running and everything starts to taper off, then you can start to, go from, let's say, 2 or 3 times a week to once a week to once every other week. And then you want to do some type of maintenance, maybe once a month. But like you were saying, Kim, earlier, stress is a huge part of what the problem is. And a lot of us are either working ourselves to death
Mhm.
or to make s- some type of income, a living wage. A lot of times now we're having to work 2 and 3 jobs to make a living wage. We are not sleeping well, we are not
Right.
eating well. And in Chinese medicine, the gut is really, I will say, pretty much everything, right? So in Chinese medicine, it's related to the earth element. And if you think about earth, that's stability. And so you really want to have a good gut microbiome. And then there's the gut brain connection. So this is your first brain, your gut is the second brain, and they are constantly communicating through something called the vagus nerve, which is a nerve that goes from your brain, and it connects to, it speaks to the heart and the lungs and the gut. And so there's all this information being, transmuted back and forth. And so when the gut, which also we have serotonin made in the gut, your immune system starts in the gut. And so when that starts to sort of, I don't want to say fail, but when that starts to become compromised, you get anxiety, you get depression, your cortisol levels, which I'm sure you've all heard about, go through the roof. So part of that shows up as being extremely fatigued. Um, when you go to bed at night, that tired and wired feeling where it's like you're exhausted, but you can't sleep because your brain is going on overload. And, you're then starting to think about how to solve the world's problems or whatnot, like all these things you can't control. And like you're up till 3 in the morning. That's cortisol. And the stress, that's stress induced. So really one of the things that I talk to my people about that I like to stress is really about keeping that gut healthy, and getting your stress levels down because it's important. And the older we get, I'm in midlife now, and then
Easy now.
Yeah.
we're not old. We are
No.
not old. But but we don't, I mean, right? But the truth of the matter is we don't bounce back quite as quickly. And then I am in perimenopause. So now hormones are really, sort of getting in there. And it becomes a complex thing, but it doesn't have to be expensive and it doesn't have to take a hold of your life. Little changes can really, really, really help. And I really advocate for adding things in to your lifestyle versus taking things out, because I think the more you add in, the easier it is for the other stuff to sort of fade away naturally. And I am not about deprivation. I think when we feel deprived, it's just innately as human beings, we start to rebel, and then we just stop. I think deprivation is not a good thing. So I always stress, like, what can we do? What can we add in? How can we fit it into your lifestyle? Because most of us are really busy. And there are ways you can do that, and then it becomes a habit. And
I
then
have to laugh at what you just said, and I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no,
But
please.
you said about adding stuff in. I have had monsters probably every day of my life for the last 15, 18 years. And if not one, six a day. And that's no exaggeration. So we
Yeah.
started juicing, and I completely stopped Monster completely. And you couldn't have paid me to quit drinking Monsters. I just drank them all the time. The taste,
Mhm.
the energy, blah blah blah. But the juicing took place of that. And I literally tried to start drinking them the other day just to see. I couldn't do it. All of a sudden, all I could taste was chemicals. That's
Yeah.
all I could taste. And it's crazy when you take some of that out of your body and try to introduce it again. It's like the body knows, wait a minute, no, 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 no. This is not what I want.
Yeah.
I love that.
Exactly.
He used to be, he'd come home from his shift at the firehouse, right? And he'd come home and he'd have like a monster, almost empty monster can. And I'd roll my eyes and I look at him like, really, babe? Because I hate that crap. It was so easy and accessible. I mean, you'd tell me like, hey,
Well,
the
they have it at the
house.
hospitals. When you go to hospitals, they give you the monsters, the Red Bulls, the they give you food, cookies, everything. Everything is there in the
Yeah.
what they call 911 or EM or 911 cafe. A lot of the hospitals have it, and everything is free. And everybody's like, here, 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 here. And next thing you know, you're up to six a day. Don't know why I can't go to bed.
Right.
It makes
Right.
me think of like cafeteria food that we're putting in our children, right? All of these things that we know. And so back in 2020, when I had literally barely survived this virus and all of the things that were like domino effects for us, for our family, my eardrums were protruding. There were problem after problem after problem. And we were working very closely with our medical provider, who we love and adore. And by the time we counted over the next, what, like 2 years,
3 years.
I
Yeah.
had been on 28 rounds of steroids and antibiotics that were not fixing the problem, but I didn't know what else to do.
Right.
And so that created, when I say massive inflammation, I like massive inflammation. And so Rich and I, we sat down, we're like, I can't do this. You know, they drew my blood, my cortisol level was through the roof because we talk about day-to-day stress. We talk about good stress and bad stress. Being self-employed, that is the most amount of stress I think anyone could possibly have. I really
Sure.
do. And trust me, we've been
For
through
the
it.
person and the spouse.
Yes. And so what we found was like, we've got to really look at this from the root. But the problem, Jill, and this is why we really wanted to have this conversation with you, is because knowing what I had to do, knowing what Rich and I had to do to really resolve my issues was taking more time away from the business, because now we're adding in chiropractic care, massages for stress management, acupuncture. I'm working with a holistic practitioner who wants to do bioenergy testing and put me on all these corrective supplements. And like Rich said, we started juicing. And I'm sorry, buying healthier foods is more expensive than running through a KFC drive-through. And
Yeah.
it's horrible what we're putting in our bodies and what we're doing to ourselves. But honestly, the stress of, what would you say, babe? I want to say somewhere between $600 to $1,000 a month
Mhm.
added to our expenses just to get my health back under control.
Yeah.
You say that, but also too, once you start taking in the good stuff, like let's face it, we were spending probably almost $100 a month on monsters for me. And now instead of going to monsters, now that's going towards juicing. So it can be more expensive, but it also, once you adapt, once you change, I I think it's not that far off, because now it takes more time to do these things. You have to put time into it. But it kind of combines everything together at that point.
You're
Yeah.
not wrong. And ironically, I just got hit with the same virus that I had in 2020 that almost killed me, literally almost killed me. And because we've taken all of these corrective steps, yeah, I was down for 15 days and I had the fatigue and I had all that other stuff, but my body is so clean. My immune system, right? That gut health that you're talking about. A lot of people don't know that the immune system starts and lives in the gut.
Right.
And so now this is the first time that my body was healthy and strong enough to completely eradicate the virus on its own with no assistance whatsoever. But we do our juicing every single day and we love it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great way to get nutrients in, and I think there, the reality is there is an expense to taking care of yourself, right? I mean,
And on the other side, there's a bigger expense. I got a bill for $1,600 from the ER for a very, very, very stupid minor thing that could have been prevented when I was sick. And now,
right.
you watch the bills pile up because you're consuming sugar and you're consuming the things and you're consuming the monster, and the domino effect, I think, really is more expensive on the flip side.
It is.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, you have to sort of consider what the alternative is. And I know a lot of people, I know it's not easy. I get it. But medical bills are very expensive, and
Right.
you don't want to have to get there. It is so much easier to get your health back on track and to feel better before you get to a critical situation. Um, so I understand that for a lot of folks, yes, eating organic, I get it. It can be expensive. The nice thing is not everything, not every fruit or every vegetable, not all produce has to be organic. There are some, there's the Clean 15, there's a list, and there's also the Dirty Dozen. And so you can just Google those. And they will tell you, so things with a thicker skin, typically,
Mhm.
you don't need to get organic. Don't worry about it. Or if you can't afford organic, we get it. Just there are fruit and vegetable washes, that
Mhm.
you can do and just soak your stuff in it first. So there are some ways around it. You don't have to do everything organic. Berries, I really try. That is one of the things that for me is sort of non-negotiable because they are just sprayed very, very heavily. But again, you can use a veggie wash. Trader Joe's, which I love, they've got a great, or they at least used to. I haven't bought it in a while, but they have a great fruit and veggie wash. And just soak your stuff for I think it's like a few hours, but and set it aside and then rinse it really well. So there are all these ways to still create health without breaking a budget because I've had to learn that too. It's that's been a huge part of how do I maintain my health? How do I help maintain my partner's health without, having to go into crazy amounts of debt to do this?
Yeah.
you
Yep.
know, and there are ways, but it will take commitment. Um, but that's why we just try to get people to start small and then it becomes a habit.
And I think the commitment, you don't have to get to the point where we were, where it's like, oh my gosh, someone's critically, like chronically ill. The
Right.
medical bills are piling in. Now you need a whole team. Like, let's nip this in the bud and prevent this. And Rich, you bring this up all the time that even when we started to like juice,
Yeah.
our appetite isn't what it used to be, right? So he'll come home and say, we're not spending a fraction of what we used to spend on groceries because we're not craving the salts and the sugars. We're not looking for the crap. And so we're cleaning it up sometimes without even realizing it.
Right.
And I think it's strange ever since we started juicing, I love vegetables and I can't believe it's coming out of my mouth, but I like fruits and vegetables now. And when I cook, I crave it. Ever since we started juicing, I don't crave it anymore. It's funny. It's like, okay, we'll have a protein and maybe a small carb, but for the most part, we really don't hit a lot of vegetables at night because we're getting it during the day. And my
Mhm.
body's not it's not craving, oh, I gotta have spinach or I gotta have broccoli. I'm not craving that anymore because I'm
Right.
getting it in the morning. And you don't realize how unhealthy you are until you get healthier. It's strange. It's
Yeah.
just wild.
Yeah, it's the truth. And a lot of times because most of I believe I was just listening to somebody the other day and he was saying that about 60% of our diet is fully processed food.
Yes.
So it's devoid of nutrition. So we keep eating more and more of that because our bodies are craving nutrition that we're not getting. And so it's craving, it will crave the wrong things
Right.
because you're craving something, and so you're going to eat whatever and more of it. But when you are feeding yourself with the nutrition it needs, your mood, you don't have as many mood swings. You're not as anxious,
Yep.
right? You're not as, if you're suffering with depression, that's not happening as much. You'll start to feel shifts. You'll start to notice shifts. And that's all because your gut, is speaking to your brain and your brain likewise is speaking to your gut. It is that constant connection. And when you're feeding your body the things it needs or doing deep breathing, which costs nothing. There's actually a great breathing technique that I love for the nights that I can't sleep because when my cortisol is really high. Um, it may take you a few rounds, it may not, but you can, if you find yourself lying awake at night and you cannot sleep because your mind is going, you can take a deep breath in and then take one more deep breath in. So that first deep breath in, you don't inhale all the way. So you take a deep breath and then you take that second deep breath to fully inhale and then you hold it for maybe 3 seconds and then you exhale fully through your mouth. And then if you do that for a few rounds, you will start to notice the calming effect it has. And then you will fall asleep eventually. It may not happen right away, but sometimes it'll take me 7 rounds, sometimes 10, sometimes 3. But it's a great way to be able to get to sleep if your brain just, if the squirrels in your brain are just running wild. Um, it's hard not to be stressed nowadays. There's a lot happening, but there are things, I've had to learn that I can, whatever I can't control, I have to release on some level. And the only thing you really have control of is how you are in your microcosm of the world and what you put in your body and what you choose to focus on, right? And so, I think on some level that's just a great way to start.
It's funny you talk about the breathing technique, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but we're taught that in the fire academy. If our bottles start dropping and our alarms are going off, we do what's called skip breathing. You
Hmm.
breathe in, then you breathe in again rather than exhaling because you're saving. You breathe in again, and it's a twofold system. You're slowing down your consumption of air, but you're also calming your heart, you're calming your brain, which gives you less need for that oxygen to be in the body as much. So it's very unique that you brought that up, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, and I think the deep breathing, that's also how you can activate that vagus nerve, which is
Yep.
what you're talking about, right, Rich?
Sure.
It's that vagus nerve that's it's again, it's that communication superhighway.
Mm-hmm.
So, your brain is telling your gut, and then your gut is telling your brain everything's okay, and we can drop our cortisol levels and all
Mm-hmm.
the things. It's just it all is symbiotic. It all works together. And the beautiful thing is it doesn't take much.
No, that's cool.
You know, it will take a little consistency. It's good to devote 15 minutes a day to yourself. I know for some people that's even hard to carve out. Set an alarm for yourself once a day. If you could do it twice a day, great. For 15 minutes a day, your coworkers can live without you, your kids can live without
Mm-hmm.
you, your
Mm-hmm.
spouse can live without you.
I
You
can.
cannot live. Right. Well, the two of you, maybe not, right? But you cannot live without yourself. You need 15 minutes a day to just devote to you. You can even if deep breathing is not your thing, take your shoes off, take your socks off, go outside, step on some grass, step
Mm-hmm.
on the concrete if you don't have grass. We don't have grass where we live. So, you can step on concrete, step in dirt, and that also is very grounding. That helps ground you to the ions from the earth. 15 minutes, it doesn't take much, but you've got to take care of yourself. You have to, because if you don't, no one else really can.
Let's be real for a minute. I mean it, because a lot of us as humans will always do more and be more for other people while constantly putting themselves last.
Absolutely.
That's a very real problem, whether we don't think highly enough, whether we don't think we're worth it. There's some internal issues. I send them to Rich for the Get Unstuck coaching in that case, or maybe we do some NLP. But I'll never, ever forget when I forget what was going on, but I had a conversation with my dad. What he said to me was, if you go down, this whole train derails.
Yeah.
And I sat there thinking, dang, he's not wrong. And I have to put myself first. It's not selfish. So if you're
Exactly.
in that position, maybe finding an accountability partner. Right now we're covered in snow, but when we have grass, Rich will literally either text me or come to my office door and go, let's go, take your socks and shoes off. We're going out to the grass. And we put our phones down and we go outside together and we ground and we just sit there and we're in peace and we're letting that kind of like central nervous system just
Yes.
reset.
About, I'm going to lie and say 10 or 15 years ago, there was a commercial, and it basically said, if you could only have one engine for the rest of your life in your car, what kind of oil would you put in it? And originally I thought it was a vehicle or an oil commercial, and it wasn't. And they said, okay, you only have one heart and you only have one body. What are you putting in your engine? And what are you doing to your own engine? And I thought that was so wild to just come from a side angle, and you immediately you think, oh, if I only have one engine my entire life, I'm going to buy the best oil I possibly can so I never have a problem. What do we do to our bodies?
Exactly.
It's crazy.
And like Kim was saying earlier, I mean, the fact of the matter is that, you know, it doesn't matter how much money you have
Mhm.
or how much money, you're trying to gain or, how many other things you have in your life that you feel like you need to attain. If you do not have your health, you don't have anything.
No.
It really, truly doesn't matter because if that piece fails,
Mhm.
the rest of it's gone.
Yeah.
So you have to prioritize yourself.
Mhm.
It is not selfish. You have to think about it in the sense that people around you will thrive if you're thriving
Right.
because you cannot give from an empty well. You cannot drink from an empty cup. You just can't. And most of us are running on empty. And you just can't give to the people you love that
Mhm.
way.
Yep.
You
In the
know?
fire service, the number one injury as a rule is back injuries. So they do everything possible they can to stop back injuries. And I'm sure it's from a workman's comp point of view and all that jazz. But I look at people prior to me that nobody ever worried about their back, and they're retired and they're on a cane or they barely can walk and they can't even enjoy life. And that's no different with your health. A back, you can't get away from it. Maybe you could be on pain pills or whatever it may be, but if you don't take care of your body, you're done. You're done.
Exactly. I mean, it's the analogy of when you're on a plane, right? What do they tell you? If
Right.
God forbid something happens or it's a little unstable up there, whose mask do you put on first? You do
Yeah.
your own first.
Yeah.
Because most of us, like Kim was saying, we just want to help everybody else. It's like we come last, but you can't.
Can't.
Because if something's happening to you and you got little kids or you have elderly people,
Mm.
they need you.
Oh
They're
yeah.
they're right. And so it's the same analogy. We have got to start taking ourselves seriously, our health seriously, or else we have nothing. And the people that count on us have nothing,
Right.
Ugh,
you know.
I love this conversation. And it's really because, we've lived that side of
Yeah.
things and it's not pleasant. We've seen what it does, not only financially, the
Mhm.
scary side of things, really. And like you said at the beginning, we're in the mid to upper numbers here.
Easy.
I'm just saying,
Easy.
you look at things differently.
Mhm.
And, for me being down the first time for 20 something days, and then this time like 15 days, Rich will come in the bedroom and I'm just sleeping and he's checking on me. He's like, how you doing? I miss my partner,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and you have got so many different facets of what's really going on within the situation. So we really respect and we really appreciate the fact that you're helping so many individuals, parents, families really start to look at the holistic approach and the holistic side of things without breaking the bank. Because, like we've established in today's conversation, without you, the train derails.
Mhm.
So, where can we find you, Jill? Because I just want to toot your horn for a minute. This woman makes the greatest, funnest, most like educational videos, and
What?
they're so, so good. And it's funny, Jill, I
Thank
haven't
you.
even told you this yet. We had gone out to a restaurant a few weeks ago, and it's abnormally cold here in Tennessee. We don't usually get to these degrees and this amount of snow, but it is. And I had my scarf all covered up. And Rich and I watch a show where they call it a pashmina. So he's always making fun of me. And my dad's like, oh, you wearing a scarf today? And I'm like, yeah, well, in Jill's video, she said that, and I shared about the Chinese medicine and the scarf. And he's like, oh, maybe I'll start wearing a scarf too. So we're learning so much from watching your videos and just the little things we can do in the day to day that no one else is sharing or teaching or educating us about. So where can we find you?
So, I'm just getting started on social media. So one of the things that I'm starting with is Pinterest. So you can go to pinterest.com/ the Jill Rosen. Um, and that's one place. And then I am on TikTok as well. I'm across all platforms as the Jill Rosen. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well. And an app called Clapper. So if you look at up the Jill Rosen, you can find me there.
We'll have all those links in the show notes here. Thanks again, buddy, for being here with us. We're going to have to definitely have you out for another episode because there's so many directions and so many things that we could talk about today. Thanks again, Joe.
Thank you so much. Love you guys. Appreciate all the work you do.
Bye for now. And hey, before you go, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. And as always, friends don't let friends grow and develop alone. So share this episode with someone you love and care about. We'll see you in the next episode.